For more than 5 decades, Carol Burnett made millions of people laugh. Every week, families gathered around their televisions to watch her unforgettable characters, hilarious sketches, and legendary performances. She became one of the most beloved entertainers in television history, known for turning even the simplest moments into comedy gold. But behind the bright smile and endless laughter was a woman carrying memories so painful that one performance became impossible for her to watch ever again. In 1977, Carol appeared in one of the most emotional sketches ever shown on The Carol Burnett Show. The performance was so powerful that members of the crew reportedly struggled to hold back tears during filming. Critics praised it as one of the finest moments of her career, and audiences were deeply moved. Yet despite all the praise, Carol made a surprising confession years later. She admitted she had never watched the sketch again, not because it wasn't good, but because it reminded her too much of her own life. To understand why that performance affected her so deeply, you have to go back to where her remarkable journey began. Carol Burnett entered the world on April 26, 1933, in San Antonio, Texas. From the beginning, life dealt her challenges that no child should have to face. Her parents struggled with severe alcoholism, making it impossible for them to provide a stable home. Her father drifted from one job to another, while her mother battled her own addiction. Instead of bedtime stories and family dinners, Carol's earliest memories were filled with uncertainty, loneliness, and emotional pain. Eventually, her parents could no longer care for her. As a young child, she was sent to live with her maternal grandmother, Mabel White, a decision that would completely change the course of her life. Although Mabel had very little money, she gave Carol something priceless. She gave her unconditional love. In 1940, Carol and her grandmother left Texas and moved to Hollywood, California, hoping for a fresh start. But Hollywood wasn't the glamorous paradise many imagine. The pair rented a tiny room inside a rundown boarding house filled with struggling families, elderly tenants, people battling addiction, and individuals trying desperately to survive. Life was incredibly difficult. They lived on roughly $20 a week, barely enough to buy food, pay bills, or afford basic necessities. Sometimes they couldn't even purchase toilet paper. Instead, they quietly took roles from the local movie theater simply because they had no other choice. It wasn't something they were proud of. It was survival. Despite their poverty, one weekly tradition became Carol's escape from reality. Every Saturday, she and her grandmother went to the movies. Those few hours inside the theater changed everything. As the lights dimmed and the curtain opened, Carol entered worlds filled with music, romance, adventure, and laughter. For a little while, the hardships waiting outside simply disappeared. Those films sparked a dream inside the young girl. One day, she wanted to become part of that magical world. Life inside the boarding house wasn't easy. To cope with loneliness, Carol created an imaginary twin sister named Karen. Karen was everything Carol wished she could be. Confident, fearless, popular, always smiling. Carol became so convincing while pretending to be Karen that many neighbors genuinely believed another little girl lived in the building. She would run upstairs, quickly change her hairstyle or clothes, then return pretending to be her imaginary sister. Moments later, she would transform back into Carol. Without realizing it, she was developing the acting skills that would one day make her famous. Another childhood memory unexpectedly shaped her future. While watching Tarzan movies, Carol became fascinated by Johnny Weissmuller's famous Jungle Yell. She practiced copying it over and over again. Day after day, week after week, she carefully matched every pitch, every breath, and every sound. What seemed like a silly childhood game was actually strengthening her voice, improving her breathing, and teaching her vocal control. Years later, that famous Tarzan yell became one of her signature comedy routines, bringing audiences to their feet with laughter. Sometimes the smallest childhood habits become the greatest professional gifts. As Carol entered high school, she believed journalism would become her career. Writing fascinated her, partly because her mother had once dreamed of becoming a writer herself. Carol hoped she could accomplish what her mother never had the chance to achieve. She enrolled at UCLA with journalism in mind. There was just one problem. She couldn't afford tuition. Even $50 seemed impossible. Her dream appeared to be slipping away before it had even begun. Then something extraordinary happened. An anonymous stranger quietly paid the money she needed. No publicity, no expectations, no request for repayment. Simply an act of kindness from someone she would never know. That single gesture changed her life forever. While attending UCLA, Carol enrolled in an acting class simply to complete an elective requirement. She expected very little. Instead, it became the moment that transformed her future. The shy young woman who had spent years hiding behind fear suddenly came alive on stage. She discovered something she had never experienced before: confidence. She could make people laugh without trying. She could sing. She could perform. She could command an audience. Her professors immediately noticed her remarkable talent. So did her classmates. Within months, journalism no longer felt like the right path. Carol changed her major and fully committed herself to acting. It was a risky decision. There were no guarantees of success. But for the first time in her life, she wasn't simply trying to survive. She was daring to dream. Her gamble quickly paid off. By the end of her freshman year, UCLA honored Carol as the theater department's most promising newcomer. The recognition meant far more than receiving an award. It gave her confidence. After years of doubting herself, someone else believed she belonged on the stage. Mentors began offering guidance. Professors encouraged her to keep performing. Better opportunities started appearing. For the first time, Carol truly believed she might have a future in entertainment. Still, dreams alone couldn't pay the bills. Carol worked as an usher, earning just 65 cents an hour while attending college. Money remained tight, and she often worried about whether she could continue chasing her goals. Then fate intervened once again. At a party in San Diego, Carol found herself quietly filling her purse with leftover appetizers so she could bring food home to her grandmother. A wealthy businessman happened to notice. Instead of judging her, he struck up a conversation. Carol admitted she dreamed of performing on Broadway in New York, but simply couldn't afford to get there. The businessman listened carefully. Then he made an unbelievable offer. He would loan Carol and her boyfriend enough money to move across the country. But he attached 3 simple conditions. First, they could never reveal his identity. Second, the money had to be used only to travel to New York. And finally, if they ever became successful, they had to help someone else achieve their dreams. He didn't want recognition. He only wanted kindness to continue. Years earlier, someone had done the same for him. Now, it was his turn to pay it forward. Armed with $2,000 and enormous hope, Carol packed her belongings in 1954 and headed to New York City. She barely knew anyone there. She had never lived so far from home. Yet surprisingly, she wasn't afraid. Years later, she admitted she simply didn't know enough to understand how difficult the journey would become. Reality hit almost immediately. New York was expensive. The savings disappeared far faster than expected. At one point, Carol became so discouraged that she called home in tears. Her family begged her to return to California. She almost did. Then something unexpected happened. A hurricane named Carol appeared in weather reports moving toward the East Coast. Rather than seeing danger, she saw encouragement. She took it as a sign that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Instead of giving up, she stayed. That single decision would change television history forever. Life in New York wasn't glamorous. Carol found a bed at the famous rehearsal club, a boarding house where young actresses lived while chasing Broadway dreams. The accommodations were far from luxurious. Several women shared a single room. There was barely enough closet space for everyone's clothes, and one bathroom served the entire floor. But compared to the hardships she had known growing up, it felt like paradise. Every day was filled with hope. The hallways echoed with aspiring singers practicing their songs, actresses rehearsing lines, and dancers preparing for auditions. Everyone shared one goal: to make it in show business. To survive, Carol worked several jobs while attending countless auditions. She checked coats, waited tables, and accepted almost any opportunity that paid a few dollars. Many auditions ended in rejection. Others didn't even lead to callbacks. Still, she refused to quit. She believed that somewhere, one opportunity would change everything. That opportunity arrived in the most unexpected way. Carol performed a humorous novelty song about U.S. Secretary of State John Foster Dulles. The song was intentionally ridiculous, but Carol delivered it with such perfect comic timing that audiences couldn't stop laughing. Her performance quickly attracted attention. Soon she was invited to appear on national television. Programs like The Jack Paar Show and The Ed Sullivan Show introduced millions of Americans to a young comedian unlike anyone they had ever seen. She wasn't trying to be glamorous. She wasn't trying to be perfect. She was simply herself, and audiences loved her for it. Television opened new doors, but Broadway remained Carol's greatest dream. That dream finally became reality in 1959 when she landed the starring role in the musical Once Upon a Mattress. Instead of playing a graceful fairy tale princess, Carol portrayed Princess Winifred, a loud, awkward, energetic young woman who completely turned traditional princess stereotypes upside down. Critics admired her fearless performance. Audiences adored her. The production became a major success, running for hundreds of performances. Carol even received her first Tony Award nomination, proving she was no longer an unknown performer struggling to survive. She had officially become a Broadway star. Exactly 5 years after receiving the anonymous loan that allowed her to travel to New York, Carol fulfilled her promise. She repaid every penny. The mysterious businessman never asked for recognition and reportedly never even responded. But Carol never forgot what he had done. His generosity became one of the guiding principles of her own life, inspiring her to help young performers whenever she had the opportunity. She believed kindness had changed her future. Now she wanted to do the same for others. Soon another opportunity transformed her career. Carol joined The Gary Moore Show, where her incredible versatility amazed viewers. She could sing beautifully one moment, become an outrageous comedy character the next, and then surprise everyone with heartfelt dramatic acting. The show earned Carol her first Emmy Award and introduced her to a national audience every week. More importantly, she learned valuable lessons about timing, improvisation, and audience interaction that would later define her own television program. In 1962, Carol teamed up with the talented Julie Andrews for a television special that almost never happened. Network executives doubted the project would succeed. They questioned whether viewers would tune in. Then, during an ordinary evening after a promotional event, something remarkable happened. Carol jokingly told executives that she would probably have to hitch a ride home because she couldn't find a taxi. Moments later, a truck driver actually stopped and offered her a ride. The executives laughed, calling it a sign. Soon afterward, the special received approval. When it aired, it became a massive success, winning major television awards and proving Carol's star power had become undeniable. Then came the project that would define her legacy forever. In September 1967, the Carol Burnett Show premiered. Television would never be the same. For 11 extraordinary seasons, nearly 30 million viewers tuned in every week. The program combined sketch comedy, music, celebrity guests, and spontaneous audience interaction in a way no other show had ever attempted. Carol also broke important barriers for women in entertainment. At a time when television executives were overwhelmingly male, she became one of the first women to host and lead her own successful variety series. The show collected an incredible number of awards, including dozens of Emmy victories, and inspired future programs such as Saturday Night Live. Its influence can still be seen decades later.